Okay, I'm U Sports, Coach Kent. Today I'm in Braunschweig with a special guest. So I give him a little introduction. So, one-time Italian Super Bowl champ, Italian Super Bowl MVP,
Yep.
6-time German Bowl champion, and 3-time Euro Bowl champion, Jabari Johnson.
Thank you very much, man. Much appreciated. God is great. That's my what I believe through and through. You know, I definitely could not have had the amount of success that I've had in my playing career or in life without the man upstairs, man. So
Right.
that is deeply rooted within me, and I try my best to instill that in my family as well. And you know, life has been good, man. You know.
Yeah, that's good to hear. So, thanks for joining us. Thanks for
having me.
Right. Thanks for being willing to share your story on
Absolutely.
our platform.
Absolutely.
Thanks again for also welcoming us into your home. So today we would just like to go through your story, go through your background, your history from the beginnings,
Right.
up until now, pretty much.
Yep.
So you're from Mesa, Arizona, right?
Yeah, well, actually, I'm from Phoenix,
Okay.
Phoenix, Arizona. But again, you know, the metropolitan area. You know, within Phoenix, you have, you know, Mesa, Tempe, Scottsdale, and that's pretty much generally what makes Phoenix, Arizona, for what it is. You know?
Okay.
But yeah, I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, and then at some point in South Phoenix, Arizona, moving from South Phoenix to Tempe, and that's pretty much where we still reside. You know, for my family today, man. So. Yeah, I grew up in Phoenix, man.
Okay. So how would you describe Phoenix?
Phoenix is a very, it's a beautiful city, man. Arizona in itself is a very beautiful state. And I think a lot of people generally, when you say something like, yeah, okay, Arizona, and they think Grand Canyon, and they talk, and it's like, yeah, but that's not all to the state of Arizona. But the you know, it's an agricultural state, you know, so when you get to Arizona and you see it as you know, when you hit Phoenix Sky Harbor and you're, you know, on your landing descent, you see a lot of farmlands, a lot of fields, and so on. But with that being said, Phoenix is a very, very booming city, and it's been like that for many years.
Okay.
Obviously, the Super Bowl has been there a few times, and so on. So, but it's definitely a great place, I would say, to be born and have your, you know, my childhood experiences that ran through there, man. So yeah, it's a good deal.
Okay. And do you have any siblings?
I do. I have 3 older brothers and a younger sister, and you know, there's a million stories with you know, having for my parents to have 4 boys, and we're all pretty much a year apart. You know what I mean? So from my oldest brother down to myself, and literally very rambunctious, very energetic, you know, trying our best to not to get into too much trouble, because, you know, like most, you know, that belt was not far away.
Right.
But yeah, 4 older brothers, a younger sister, and yeah, full house, man.
Yeah. Okay. And are your parents also from the Phoenix area?
Yeah, well, originally, my father, yes, but my mother, I believe, even though she spent quite a few years of her childhood years in Arizona, but she's from Louisiana.
Okay.
And from Shreveport, Louisiana, to be exact. This is in the Ruston, Shreveport area. It's northern. From the boot, as they say.
Okay.
But so yeah, her family then moved out west, and you know, and at some point, that's where she met my father, and yeah, and that's where they settled.
Okay. So what was it like growing up in Phoenix?
Phoenix was cool, man. You know, if you can get past the heat, you know, that was one of the things where. Phoenix, Arizona it's sunny weather, you know, on a day in, day out basis. So there was no staying inside and obviously back then video games were starting to become of age, but me and my brothers was outside constantly, playing, football in the street, tag and all the other games with the rest of the kids in the community and so on. So it was definitely a beautiful childhood in that regards, but definitely also dangerous because growing up in South Phoenix, we have a lot of the gang culture.
Okay,
was prevalent and was very huge at that time. So
what type of gang culture?
We're talking Crips and Bloods,
Okay.
and various different factions or sets from those neighborhood gangs. But to kind of to navigate through that was always that was the trick. You knew as kids, for us, what neighborhood we lived in, so we knew also the certain colors that you can get by with versus obviously wearing the wrong color, if you will. So but I think for the most part everyone knew my father and my folks as being very stand up people for the community and literally making sure that we were always okay. And I think that kind of, in doing so, people had a lot of respect for us, but through them as well. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so on.
You mentioned off camera that your father was a pastor, so
right, and that was exactly
the role he had in the community.
Absolutely. By him being a minister, and people obviously having that respect for that. But obviously, when you grow up in that kind of areas, if you will, you do run across a lot of broken homes. You run across a lot of gang affiliated people and children, and just being brought up in around the wrong crowd,
right.
if you will. And he was my pops is very smart, in regards to that, because he was also a football coach.
Okay.
So he knew, that if you going to the hood or to the projects, to low income housing areas, that's a lot of your talent is there.
Right.
So he was very smart in regards to saying, I have a football team. I want to build the best football team, but yet at the same time, I want to give, these kids chances in life. And so he literally, there was times, man, we had different kids staying at our house, on a Friday night, you know what I mean? And spending the nights with us and then wake up and go play, Pop Warner football the next morning. And, have pizza evenings and stuff like this, where we really gelled, not just as a family, but as a community. And just kind of going on from there and letting him instill, great values of how to view life and how to pull yourself out of, the rubble, if you will, to kind of put those values into the young youth, man, around in our neighborhood. So people had a lot of respect for us. And when things happen, it was one of those things like, okay, but the Johnsons, leave the Johnson boys out of it. It's about us over here. So, it was a fun childhood, you know what I mean? Minus all of the whippings and getting into trouble in that regards, but It was cool. It was cool.
So you mentioned a little bit earlier while you were speaking that, you guys play football, you play tag. So is that how you initially got into sports, just playing in the neighborhood?
Well, man, my father, both my parents played sports.
Okay.
My mother was she'd probably say no, but I would say she was an accomplished swimmer, athlete, I would say. She did swimming, played a bit of basketball, was very good at tennis, and just an athlete. My father actually played running back, but I think in his era, he's coming from a Jim Brown era, so big backs and so on was the key for most NFL teams at that time. It's what you saw on television, and so for him, my father is really, I want to say he's about 5'7", 5'8". I think 5'8" is being a little bit generous. I love you, Pop, but small back. But he was a scat back, and by them being together and having my brothers and I, then I think by natural cause of DNA, they ended up having athletic children. Mm-hmm. So in that process, he knew, as a visionary for himself, he knew what he wanted to do.
Right.
He said, "Hey, I have 4 boys. We're living in a good area, but this area is also gang infested. Mm-hmm. The only way that I see fit for my family to make it out of this area is I have to train them in football, or I have to train them in track and field." Mm-hmm. So we constantly, a lot of people say, "Well, how you do it?" Well, we were in sports from January to December. We were in sports. There wasn't a time where I could think about, outside of coming home from school and your normal days of playing around and so on, mm-hmm. where we did not have something to do afterwards, like football practice. Turn around, now it's track and field season. Turn back around after track and field season, back to football season, because he knew even then track and field was the base foundation of speed,
right,
that translated or correlated over to the football field. Mm-hmm. So me and my brothers were constantly doing something positive in that regards to keep us off the streets, or to keep us from, doing something that was, probably not so good in that regard. So, but a visionary in that aspect, just because, he also knew the best way to keep kids away from everything is just to keep them positively busy. Mm-hmm. Whether it's in recreational sports, whether it's in, joining the YMCA or something like this in the community, as mm-hmm. long as you're, weren't being idle. As he would say, idle minds is a devil playground. So mm-hmm. as long as we, he kept the kids busy doing something positive, that's what it was all about.
Okay. Okay.